Hello.
6 ordinary individuals. 6 extraordinary stories. In a time of war, he spread peace.
I never forget the first flight I took into Berlin. On the other side of Barbara, people just waiting for food. And I said, I've got to do something more.
Everybody heard of this lieutenant up there throwing candy out the window.
Service is the bottom line to happiness and fulfillment.
On a path less traveled, she followed her heart.
Tim, it's very important for us to share with others some of the blessings that we have been given.
When hope was lost, she found faith.
I was just so emotionally overwhelmed. I would just shut God out. But I look at my life now, and it's been full of miracles. There's no coincidence.
When people needed him, he returned home.
How people are underprivileged, and it's been my dream to help others get equal opportunities.
On October 10th,
we focus on those things that make us one, and I think that creates a very profound sense of harmony and unity. We just want to be who we were put on earth to be.
discover a film about the power of faith.
Now I have a better understanding of how to find peace.
Meet the Mormons.
We'll convert everyone all across the planet Earth. That is the beauty of the essence of the purpose of the soldiers of the army of the church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints.
This is Infants on Thrones. The philosophies of men mingled with humor. We are the core.
Hello.
Hey, I didn't know who was taking lead on this.
I don't know either. Where's Bob?
Hey, guys.
Hey.
Bobby.
Hey, Randy.
Yo.
Hey, there you are.
Matt. What's up, guys? It feels like it's been forever.
Yeah, it's almost as if like you were totally zoned out the last time we talked together.
What did he say?
You were exactly.
I'm adding Alison to our call.
Okay,
Alison.
That's
God damn
Alison.
it.
Okay, so...
Alison, real quick, what other episodes have you been on?
You may remember me from some episodes.
Quite a few. You might remember me from Dude for a Day.
That was your debut, right?
That was my debut. And then I did a little rant on your, was it the anniversary episode? That I did, like, little...
You did Patriarchal Blessings one.
I did Patriarchal Blessings. I did the Lost Tribes.
By the way, Alison looks like she's 16 years old. We went to the movie together, and that was the first time we met. And her awesome husband.
Oh, so you live by Randy?
Yeah, she lives by me.
Yeah.
But anyway, Alison was the only one that was carded at the Elephant Bar that we went to afterwards.
I still think it's because I was wearing overalls.
That's a good point.
They take off about 10 years, I think.
Yeah. Well, my wife thinks you're cute, Alison. So.
Wait, did she say and judgmental? Because that's true.
She says
I am judgmental.
No, she says but she's judgmental, so that actually means something.
Well,
she doesn't just give gratuitous comments like that.
Well, thanks, Kristen.
But that will give people context for other things that Alison's been on. Let's get into Meet the Mormons.
Yeah, are we recording? Are we ready to do this?
Yep, we're on. Everybody's seen it now. We've got Randy.
Heyo.
Bob.
Hello.
Matt.
Hi.
Allison.
Hello.
And me, Scott. Okay, so the movie opened. This is Meet the Mormons. It opened on 10/10, 2014. So
one thing I want to mention though is that it was really fortuitous because it's not the way Alison and I worked it out. We were supposed to go on last Saturday, and circumstances led us to do it on Sunday. And I was actually glad because I was going the only people watching this are Mormons, and so we went on Sunday, and the plan was we were supposed to buy tickets for a different movie because we didn't want to contribute to this movie, and Alison and her husband chickened out and bought tickets. And Alison, what was the reaction of the guy at the ticket counter?
I asked. I don't remember if I asked I think I said, are we the only ones that are going to be in this theater? And he was like, actually, you are. I'm so surprised. And I was like, I'm not surprised because it's Sunday.
All right, well, let's break this down then, because each of our experiences.
But then we were
No. I'm not finished, Matt.
Go.
I'm not finished. So
I'm just listening now.
You're just listening.
I'm just listening now.
So I was behind.
I'm just listening now.
No, you fucking asshole. I was behind them by about 10 minutes, and so I went with the plan, and I bought a movie that I don't even remember the name of. It was like a NC-17 movie, and so I bought the ticket for that. And then we go in, and they had already started the movie, and we were the only ones in there, and it was like real-time live Science Mystery Theater 3000 or whatever that was.
Oh, so you guys are talking the whole time.
We were talking. We had openly cracked open our booze that we'd smuggled in.
It was awesome.
And it was so fun. So
that sounds like fun.
I think it's the only way to see this movie, actually.
But the thing that Alison didn't mention was that the guy at the ticket counter mentioned how crazy it was the day before and how weird it was that they're the first ones today. So they packed the theaters, or this theater, on Saturday, and on Sunday it was us.
I want to talk about my experience now and go into the theater, because we ended up going on had the day off as did it was fall break for our community, and so we decided we'd go the first showing on Friday morning, 11:15.
Oh wow.
And we thought, no, there will be nobody there. It'll be great. It'll be like a Sunday morning show. And we get there, and I just see people flocking from the parking lot. And I said, oh, my gosh, this thing's going to be packed. And I based that just on the demographic of the people who are walking from the parking lot over to the box office. You've got families, clearly just everybody just wall-to-wall lily white, a whole bunch of older ladies. It just looks like your typical Relief Society just heading in. And so I thought, oh my gosh, there's going to be a line. And sure enough, there's this big line. And so we get in, we get our tickets, no problem. We are at least on time, and we get there. And I mean, this house, it's full. But what was interesting is we start walking through, and rows are saved. I mean, it's like you're going to
just like a state conference. No,
yeah.
that's like state conference.
That's it. And I mean, they're just there's huge gaps, and we just need 2 seats. Oh no, those are all saved. Oh no, those are all saved.
Like 14 seats.
Yeah, no, that's exactly. I thought, what do you mean they're saved? I've never experienced anything like this at a movie before, where you have 8+ open seats where all I need is 2, and they're like, oh no, every one of those is saved. So we end up getting in about the second to bottom or second to top row from the second section, which aren't bad seats, but not great seats. But I was really just thrown off by the demo of the audience that was there. I mean, you're talking. I'm saying people who haven't been at a movie theater in decades. But it was fascinating to me to see.
Really?
That 11:15 just isn't a hot spot. It's just not the one that you go to.
11:15 on a weekday.
Right. So the fact that it was full, and I thought, oh my gosh, this AstroTurf Roots movement has taken effect, and it's effective. Now, granted, we're in an area in Arizona where there's a lot of members, and this is one theater. There's not a lot of theaters that are showing it, and so people did come from a number of miles away that they wouldn't have otherwise come. And in fact, we saw people that we grew up with. By people, I mean our friends' parents and grandparents that were there from the stake we grew up in. It's about 5 miles away. Afterwards, people were congregating like they do after a funeral or after a wedding. And in fact, I made a comment to one of them is, hey, well, this is nice. We get to see each other at weddings, funerals, and now when the Mormon Church puts out movies. And they thought that was hilarious.
They loved it.
Yeah, no, they didn't get I was kind of taking a slap at what was going on, but they thought that was just hilarious. And that's really what it felt like.
Now, Matt, you said that because I went to the same theater and the same showtime. I went to the 11:15 showing today.
Okay.
And there were maybe 40 or 50 people in that theater. So it's definitely dropped off from last week. But you said that when you showed up, there wasn't any previews. And when I showed up, they had previews for 16 Stones.
Oh, no, there were previews. And I thought, I wanted to talk about the previews that were shown because I laughed and Kristen and I were just rolling our eyes and just laughing at the previews.
So you saw the same previews I did then. They had 16 Stones. Yes. There was another one that was sort of like I don't even know how to describe it.
I don't know which one you're thinking of, but I'm thinking like a drama version of Book of Mormon musical, Freedom Land or something like that.
Yeah, kind of. So the 16 Stones ones was kind of like Indiana Jones meets the Jaredites. Like there were I'm serious.
No,
it
was laughable.
There's like modern, I think they were like 19th century, but they were like 19th century Mormons that had like a secret treasure map, and they're trying to find the 16 stones that God touched to light the barges for the Jaredites that came over, and they're like getting hunted by like the baddies that are trying to steal the treasure. It was total Indiana Jones
the Gadianton robbers.
Plotline.
The Gadianton robbers were hunting them down.
Yeah, it was exactly what Scott said. And did the rest of you in the other parts of the country see those same previews?
Well, because we were late, Alison, her husband, and I absolutely missed the previews. In fact, when we sat down, the movie had already started, but it looked like a preview or some kind of commercial because the beginning of this movie is this girl going around, what do you know about Mormons?
Yes, and I'm glad you said that because every other movie that you go to, you have the previews, and then you have the 3 production companies that they show.
Right.
And so okay, this is the feature film. Whereas this went from preview to beginning of the movie, and you didn't know for sure if this is the beginning to Meet the Mormons or if this is a preview of another film.
Yeah, there's no THX sound effect to let you know the movie's starting.
Right.
Yeah, Randy kept turning to me. Is this the movie? I don't think this is the movie. I'm like, yes, confused. It is.
Yeah, and I was extra confused because I just watched the 2 or 3 like Mormon film previews that I thought were the movie starting also. I just didn't, it was confusing. So
Bob, so did your experience, can you relate to either of these? We have the 2 opposite experiences between Randy with nobody there on Sunday, me with everybody there. Where you went and when you went, was it a crowd or was it something else?
It was right in the middle. So we went on a Saturday afternoon, and the theater wasn't full. It was probably about half full to 2/3 full, but it was like 50% kids and babies.
Yeah,
there's so many goddamn kids making noise that
was sacrament meeting.
It basically was. Like, it had to have been only Mormons, because I think only Mormons would not see any, problem with ruining it for everyone else in the theater because of this being such an important moment for them to, bolster ticket sales and make it so that the movie could be shared with more people who got to see it with babies and kids or whatever. So it was annoying, but we got over it, and it just added to some of the flair, I guess.
Yeah. So let me give a little bit of context from what I heard from somebody who's in a church leadership position. So they got a pre-screening of this movie 3 or 4 weeks ago at select theaters that were doing these very limited premieres, and this was for people who were stake presidents and in bishoprics and 70s and people who are in leadership positions. Men, right? No, women went too. I mean, men and their wives.
Oh, okay.
So leaders and the women who married them. And
Mrs. President so and so.
Yeah, yes. But their explicit marching orders with it were, we need to get as many people to show up for this film within the first 2 weeks in order to get into more theaters so that it will then be able to be picked up as a network, made for TV movie or a TV movie scenario. So their ultimate goal with this is to get it
on
picked
cable.
up so that it'll be on no, maybe not on cable, maybe even on a network, like a Sunday evening
right.
CBS
sure.
or something.
But just
yeah.
That will be a feature-length film on
network
broadcast.
TV. Yeah. Right, broadcast TV, sure. Yeah. So that's the goal of it. There's been letters. There's a video from Elder Holland, which we'll talk about in a second. But there was also a letter that they read over the pulpit, and then I've seen several people posting on Facebook, copies of emails that they've gotten from their local leaders, basically saying you need to show up and take your whole family and pay for tickets. And if paying for tickets is a hardship, let us know, and we will pay for tickets. So in some circumstances that I've seen, the church is actually funding this directly or indirectly through the local ward, but basically they're paying for people to go there to see their own movie.
Well, let's talk about the Holland video.
Brothers and sisters, I wish to discuss something that is breaking new ground: the upcoming theatrical release of Meet the Mormons. Originally intended for the Legacy Theater here on Temple Square, the film was so successful with test audiences that our research division had to recheck the data a few times to verify the results. Having never seen results like this before, we were determined to make it more broadly available. This is a church-produced product commissioned by the First Presidency. Meet the Mormons is an entertaining, uplifting, and inspiring film. It was not produced as a proselytizing effort. Missionaries will not be in or near theaters. The film is meant to inform and show people what we're really like. Now, as with any theatrical film, our success will depend on box office performance during the opening weekend. How long the film will be available in theaters will be dependent upon that. There are 3 simple steps that local units and members can and are encouraged to take. First, request it. If enough people request it in the same area, we will proceed with booking a theater. Another powerful way to request the film is for members to visit a local movie theater and request to buy out a showing for a group. This should only be done, however, if there is the ability to follow through on this request. Experience it. If members' circumstances permit, encourage them to attend if the film is available near them starting on October 10th. To be clear, going to see Meet the Mormons is not a commandment or a requirement. We hope you'll be particularly sensitive that members whose personal circumstances may not afford a night out at the movies do not feel pressure to do so. This theatrical release is intended to be a bold move, and we hope you'll be willing to step out boldly with us.
He makes almost like a pseudo joke at the beginning. He's like, our research division had to recheck the data a few times to verify the results, because after seeing this, it's results we've never seen anything like this before. And we determined that we needed to make it more broadly available. And because after watching it, people would consider themselves, or would consider us, Christian, and the test audience is this and that. It was like business lingo left and right, and nothing about like inspiration or like, prophetic stuff. It's just like a peek behind the curtain to me. It was like a 4-minute video of like a corporation with a research division and hamsters running on wheels, not talking to God or anything, right?
Yeah, and he did have that quote where he said something like, well, it's not a commandment to go watch this movie.
Oh, right.
But,
but it's a commandment.
we need to encourage everyone to go and watch it, says the church leader.
It was just weird. It was really weird.
Yeah. So I guess I've got a couple of kind of meta questions before we actually dig into the blow by blows of the movie. But like, who is the audience here? What's the church's motivation for doing this? Because it seems to me like the people. This is what my wife's comment was. The people who are going to go see this aren't the people who need to meet Mormons. The people who are going to go see this are Mormons, right? Which is what you're getting at, Randy. All the people that show up on a Friday or Saturday but don't show up on a Sunday, that just indicates they're all Mormons going to watch it.
Yeah,
Right.
Well, obviously,
Well, it's clear based on the Holland video that it's not go get a non-member friend or go find somebody else to bring it. It's you all go to this film.
But the film at the beginning, this Jenna Kim Jones, who's kind of the narrator of the whole thing, she's looking at it through the lens of Mormons are so misunderstood and people don't know who we are, and let's tell our story and let's tell them that Mormons are real people. So why would Mormons need to see that message?
So should we start from the beginning and like give the basic premise for posterity's sake or whatever?
Yeah, but hold on. Before we get there, who is this movie for?
Well, that would help with the premise. It's
church.
It's a documentary, right?
So go with it. Go with it, Bob.
Yeah. So it's booked. It's billed as it's a documentary film. The church even calls it that. It was produced and commissioned by the First Presidency, according to our friend Elder Holland. And so it seems like the intention is to make a movie about Mormons. There was even like a bullet-pointed slide as part of this Holland video. Like it has this check mark that says it's meant to be entertaining, uplifting, and inspiring. It's not proselytizing, but informative, and it's a unique opportunity to share who we really are, in quotes, who we really are. So the church thinks...
Who we really are? Seriously?
Yeah. They think this is
a black guy in the South, a guy from Nepal, a woman...
A kickboxing
Costa Rican woman... And a homeless single mother.
Right.
This is who we are.
Typical Mormons.
Right. We all have one of those.
We're gonna get it. We're gonna get into that.
I'm sorry. I just couldn't resist.
Don't.
Not two lawyers, a CPA, a dentist.
Hold on.
Yeah. Right.
We'll get there. God damn you guys.
So, it seems like the audience is non-members, and it's a missionary moment that's not a missionary thing, I guess.
That's the hope, that's the church's hope. That's the audience. But I think that the movie is for the church. I think this is another inoculation for members. I don't think it was I don't think that it's even meant to be. I don't see how they could make this and seriously think that people are going to watch this that are Mormon.
That's what I thought too. But it doesn't seem like much of an in-group message. I mean, it seems.
Oh, sure it does.
You think so?
Yeah, because I was watching it and I thought, God, if I were still Mormon, this would be such a self-affirming, wonderful testimony building. See, we don't focus on Joseph Smith. We're not polygamous. We're all about Jesus. We're so diverse. It's just wonderful. And I turned to Randy and I said, this is masturbatory. That's all this is. And I think
circle jerk.
Mormons love it. And that
if this was meant to be for someone other than Mormons, then the plea would have been not just to go attend but it would have been to bring your friends, encourage your friends to come, and that didn't happen. And that to me is what highlights or what makes it clear that this was for members and not for non-members.
But do you think it's possible that they thought and even had the sincere intent for this to be a missionary tool, but they just can't help themselves but produce something that is a circle jerk for members?
Yes, but there's a reason. Yes,
I think that's right.
Yes,
I think that's what it is.
And there's some reasons why I think as we go through the film. So yes, I think it was twofold, and they do expect it to also be a missionary tool, but that is a secondary. That's a secondary goal, not a primary goal.
Yeah, I see this maybe not even so much of like a missionary tool, but also just kind of a PR I don't know, another shield for the PR machine.
That's exactly
to
what
put out
it is.
there.
This is
to
PR.
say that, hey, we're not polygamists, or we're not racist, or we're not any of these other things. And this is, we get to own our message. We get to tell you who we are, instead of having a musical made about us, instead of having, all these television shows that characterize us one way. We get to put out our own bit of spin to the mass audiences, and take it or leave it. That's, they're going to put it out there.
All right, but before, so two things real quick.
Okay.
Go, Allison. I'm sure what you're going to say is much more interesting than what I'm going to say.
No, I was just curious.
And if it's not, I'm going to freaking call you out on it. So it better be good.
You better. Have any of you seen the Meet the Mormons documentary by the BBC about missionaries?
Yes.
Okay, because that's another reason why I think that they at least titled it this thing.
So you think they wanted to take the search term "Meet the Mormons" and dominate it?
Oh, sure.
All right, you get a pass for that comment.
Well, thank you.
Well,
wait.
Okay.
So two things. So one thing I thought really interesting that sets the stage for this is Box Office Mojo does not include what the production or what the budget was for this film, which is fairly rare for films. Usually, it's pretty it's pretty transparent as to how much it cost to make a film. And people look at that all the time to say, was this profitable? Is this obviously is this something that made money? But they did not provide the cost for this film or what the budget was for this film. And I thought that was kind of interesting, because I wanted to know a couple things. Number one, how much it did cost. What was the production values for this film? And then number two, the proceeds go to Red Cross. The net proceeds.
Yeah.
Cross. What I wanted to know is, with the money that they make, and we're going to talk about that in a sec, whether or not it is considered a successful or a profitable film. The reason why horror movies do so well, or the reason why so many horror movies are made, is because they're made extremely cheaply, because they don't have big budget actors, and it's pretty easy to do on the cheap, and they make money. So it's not simply because audiences go to them. It's because you could have a run of $10 million and you're going to be a really, really profitable film, not just in the theater, but then on VHS release. That was funny. Look at me.
VHS.
I'm apparently in the 80s. What a moron on rental or on
DVD,
Netflix,
streaming.
Yeah.
Streaming and iTunes. Oh my gosh! I just said VHS as if that's
1992.
Oh my God.
So my thought on that was, how Mormon is this approach to say that we're gonna the church is going to make something, and then basically they're saddling the members with the cost of it. So they're not going to just say, hey, look, your tithing money, we've got a little bit extra. We've got $5 million or $10 million or however much it took to make this film. We're going to spend some of that to put out some good PR about the church. No, they're going to cover their basis in it by having the members all show up. And I guarantee you there's some spreadsheet out there that shows an estimate of how many members they think they can get to show up, to show that they're going to be able to offset their costs, so that there's no way the church is spending a dime on this thing. By the time its theater run is over, they're going to be at least break even.
And they're putting on members who have kids from ages 3 to 12 that you have to buy tickets for.
Right. The people who are in line in front of me, they're had a few kids. Their total was $45.50 to go see this.
So you had that. So both Bob and I do some form of movie podcast, and a big piece of what we talk about on Lunchtime Movie Review is the profitability of a film and whether or not it was successful, both financially, overseas. So that type of stuff really, I geek out over that stuff a lot of times. And I was breaking this down just in my mind and thought about, okay, you have a 1 week, 2 week window where members are going to go based on Holland's video. But then you also have Monday, And so we're recording on a Tuesday. So yesterday, I suspect you had a lot of people went for family home evening. Then the other thing you have, and I hadn't thought of this until earlier today, was mutual activities. Is that people were that there were, and through Facebook you can kind of confirm this, is that there were youth groups that were going and planning to take the entire youth to different theaters to watch this film. So just based on a couple weeks and family home evening on this Monday and then Wednesday, I suspect that you're going to have a decent little
spread. Yeah, a good spread of it. The other thing that you're not thinking of, Matt, is you got the Friday, Saturday release, and then none of the Mormons are going to see it on Sunday, but what they are doing on Sunday is they're talking about it at church.
Right.
And they're telling all their friends, oh, did you go see it? Oh, we went and saw it. It's great. You know, so then they're going to get they're going to get a second bite at the apple.
Let's not lose sight of the timing of this. And I don't think this wasn't calculated. And I hate to be black helicoptering thinking it was completely, fabricated when it was released, but it was. It was the weekend before conference, right? The weekend after conference. So they promoted it, and there was this Holland video, but then the next week is Fast and Testimony meeting. And I have reports from a lot of people that half the people that got up and bore testimonies on Sunday talked about Meet the Mormons. It was effectively a testimony meeting, an advertisement testimony meeting, encouraging people who hadn't gone that week to go the following week.
I love, Matt, how you got ears on the ground at Fast and Testimony meeting.
I do. No, I do it. I have friends who did report back. They wanted to know my experience of it, and I told them. And then they called me on Sunday and were like, Matt, you're going to love this. You're going to love this. You should have seen the entire Fast and Testimony meeting was on Meet the Mormons. Everybody talking about their experience and encouraging the rest of the members to do it. And that's what triggered it. Initially, I didn't think of that. And I thought, holy shit, that's really quite brilliant if you think about it.
Well, this is why I wish I didn't just completely cut the umbilical cord from the church. Is I can't engage in this manner that Matt does. But what do you guys envision? It's Wednesday night. It's a mutual activity, and you're going to the theater to watch Meet the Mormons. Do they ask all the kids to bring cash with them, or does the ward budget pay for it?
6 of one, half dozen of the other.
Yeah, they'll probably do like if you can, we'll take, we'd like to be reimbursed, but if you can't, we understand, and probably half the people would. And
yeah, they'll probably have the leaders pay for it.
So the church might be paying for it through tithing money.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, it all goes to the church anyway. I mean, it's all black box.
And I do want to say that there are some people out there who suggest that letters that talk about the ward paying for tickets if people can't afford it, that's maybe not accurate, and that's, I don't know. I don't have firsthand knowledge of that, but there are certainly reports of wards.
I've seen some of them.
You have?
Yeah.
I got.
Yeah, I've seen them.
Okay. Well, then you guys are a better authority than I have, because I haven't seen it firsthand.
Okay, let's jump into it.
Yes, let's do this.
No, but I got one more thing. I'm just kidding.
I got to tell you though, this part of it is, to me,
Matt does have one more thing.
No, this is the interesting part. We could break down the movie and we could act like these quasi douchebag film critics, which, and we'll do that in a second. But this piece of it to me was it was fascinating to watch these people line up, and my experience after in talking to people, like I said, the stake members who are my parents' age, in their 60s and 70s, I literally heard, I haven't been to a movie in 20 years. And to hear that and really kind of grasp that wow, this is the impact that the church has, to get these people to go to a movie for the first time to a theater in 20 years, that's saying something, man. And it highlights the fact of how much the church is able to impact behavior to get people to do things that they otherwise certainly wouldn't do.
But I don't think it's as nefarious as we're painting this picture, as we're painting the church out to be, or inoculation. I think the theory we haven't covered is just wanting desperately to be validated in the way the rest of the world gets validated, and the church constantly struggles with wanting to, be their school program being the best, their football team winning means something, but it means nothing. This is just another case of the church using a worldly tool to show that, like, when we do it, it's more wholesome, it's better, it people love it more, and I think the membership kind of doing that for them is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy that I don't know that they recognize the circular aspect of it as much as we're giving them credit for. I really think that it's like a desperate call for validation, as if the world's going to take them more seriously or something.
Yeah, I think you're right, and I think part of the reason why I think it wasn't an in-group message is because there wasn't anything particularly Mormon about what anyone said in the entire film.
Right.
I mean, everything was about Jesus Christ and the gospel and praying and service and the Spirit.
All right.
I mean, it was all stuff. The whole thing could have been a Christian talking. It could have been Meet the Baptists or something, and like it would have been the exact same movie.
No, I'm glad you said that, Scott, because I'm gonna push back on you once we go through this, because I think it's absolutely. I think I can demonstrate that it was the opposite of that. That it was absolutely calculated to be an in-group message, and not necessarily a nefarious one. I'm not saying that. And in fact, I'll say that it was actually calculated to be a positive message towards members. But I walked away saying, no, that was specifically for the Utah church.
Like a little doggy treat. Like, here you go. You've done so well.
No, actually not that. And that's why, I'm interested to break this down, because really more than that it was actually a message and a direction towards the Utah, the Wasatch, the Wasatch Front and the
Mordor,
really, those type of people. It was a message, and it was a very clear message of you all need to be better. So let's break that down.
You all need to be better? What the fuck? I do not.
Yeah. No, you're gonna love it.
No, I can see where you're going with that.
Yeah,
so let's get into it.
But
then.
I'm saying I look forward to Matt spelling that out for us. But I kind of go with Bob. Like, how many times in your Mormon life were you frustrated when you meet someone who found out you're a Mormon, and they'd say, "Oh, you're the people with all the wives," and you just get so angry. Like, no, I'm a normal person. And I'm a smart person. I'm an educated person, and you want to be validated. You desperately want to be validated, and to me, that's what this whole goddamn documentary was. Was a big validation circle jerk,
right? Well, like in Korea. So you guys know that movie called The Amish that I think Harrison Ford was in.
No, it's The Witness is actually the name of the movie.
Okay, but it's about the Amish people.
Right.
But in Korean, they translated it to The Mormon. Was like the title of it.
That's funny.
And so on my mission, almost every week we'd run into somebody who's like, "Oh, you guys are Mormon? Like, so can you use cell phones and lights and cars and things like that?" Like, they all thought we were Amish. So, I mean, I think at least in the U.S. the church has a better. There's a little bit better understanding, but certainly other places where people have absolutely no idea who Mormons are.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Which is kind of the way that the movie starts
so we're an hour
out. So let's get into
the segue.
Let's get into the movie. Yeah.
Okay. So at the beginning of the movie, there's the host here. What's her name? Jenna.
All that matters is that she's blonde hair and blue eyes.
Jenna Kim Jones, who at first I thought was
with crazy dark eyebrows.
I thought it was Elizabeth Smart at first, and I was like, they didn't.
Everywhere I go, people are extra nice to me until they figure out I'm not Elizabeth Smart.
I was like, they didn't use her, and then it flashed her name, and I was like, okay, I could take a breath at that point, but I was like, that is awful.
But this.
So she's walking around New York, and she's explaining in kind of this hip, cool manner about how she's Mormon and how lots of people don't understand who Mormons are, and she kind of does this like man on the street interview where she asks people, well, what do you think about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yeah,
and they
do a good job of like splicing in pop pop culture references from South Park or Chevy Chase movies and stuff. And I thought I
couldn't believe they used the South Park reference.
Really? I
was surprised.
I was too. Yeah.
So I wanted to be there when the First Presidency was approving the movie and they see the South Park portion of it.
They got the edited part of
yeah, it was longer originally.
They used all those every pop culture reference you can think of Mormons, and they picked the South Park one that they picked. Though wasn't the All About the Mormons episode. It was the one where they go to hell, and they say the correct answer was Mormon.
Yeah,
Mormon was the correct answer.
Wasn't that was from the movie? Wasn't it? Not the TV show.
I don't know.
No.
That was from the TV show.
That was from TV
show.
Okay. It was a 2-part episode. It had to do with Satan and Saddam Hussein. Alison, you and your husband brought up a good point, though. How much footage of I got a friend named Joe who's Mormon. He's a nice guy. How much of that footage do you think was on the cutting room floor?
Yeah, they just made it seem like everyone in the entire Times Square knows absolutely shit about Mormons, and that's silly.
It doesn't surprise me that people in New York aren't going to have a good taste for what Mormons believe.
Well, wait a second,
I'll give you that. They're not going to know really well what they're like, but I still think that they probably met quite a few people who knew exactly.
Did anyone find it conspicuously left out? The Book of Mormon musical wasn't used as a reference. It's like the #1 Broadway show right now, and
probably playing.
They actually did have it. They did have the banner for it. If you one of the
on accident.
Streets
in the B-roll.
No, not in the B-roll. One of the streets that Jenna Kim Jones was walking down was right in front of the theater.
Oh, really? And it was Times Square, right? You're in Times.
Well, part of it was Times Square, but I mean, she was off Times Square on the little
O'Neill Theater.
The O'Neill Theater. She was right in front of it, and they had the little what is it, like the doorbell thing? You could see it in the top part of the marquee.
I missed that, so I'm glad you guys caught that.
Yeah, but they certainly edited out everyone who made a reference to the Book of Mormon musical, because I'm sure...
Oh, yeah, they didn't have anything about that.
Right.
Because there's no way you can go to New York and say, what do you know about Mormons, and somebody's not going to reference the Book of Mormon music. That's the thing I'll tell you, I'll give you, Allison, is everybody's going to say, oh, yeah, the musical down the road. Of course they are.
Right. Yeah. So at the very beginning of the movie, they're already setting up kind of a false premise. That's
a straw man.
Nobody knows about Mormons. Everybody has wrong ideas, and so we're going to tell you exactly who we are. And then the whole movie, they tell you all these like outlier cases of Mormons.
So let's talk about the things.
Hang on.
Let's talk about the things that they say. People say things like they're racist, they're polygamists, these are the things they highlight, and you think, okay, these are things that this film is going to address or otherwise rebut. And so the fact that they chose, and again, the church chose to include those as, quote, misperceptions, it sets it up as a premise or as a you think as a good documentary, you're going to say, okay, I'm going to start this at the beginning, then I'm going to tell the story, and I'm going to resolve these things that I introduced at the beginning, and that's not really what happens.
Right, and the racist part of it, she was the Jenna Kim Jones, the narrator. She was sort of incredulous when the person said that. She's like, "Really? You think Mormons are racist?" and I was like, "Well, yeah. Have you read the Book of Mormon? It's kind of racist. Like, there's really no way getting around saying that the Book of Mormon's racist."
Yeah,
and then they just sort of gloss over it. I mean, I kind of take the Mr. Deity view that, like, Mormons aren't racist, although some of them certainly are, but, like, I wouldn't say that Mormons as a category are racist necessarily, but Mormonism is racist. Like, they completely didn't address that part in the movie. So
right, it documents the perception of what Mormons think of themselves, because, of course, Jenna is like, well, I'm not racist, so I'm going to be all surprised when somebody thinks my religion is, and either she's just hasn't done her homework or she's just hiding behind that warm fuzzy of being all-inclusive herself based on when she was born and ignoring her church's history or whatever. So they bring up all these issues that people are highlighting, which are real Mormon issues in the past, in the present still in some ways, and then they're just surprised and they're like, now we're going to tell you what really goes on, which of course is very cookie cutter perfect. So should we move to the next person?
Yeah, but she does highlight, and I thought this part was interesting, is that she is a resident of New York, and apparently she's a
comedian.
Comedian?
Yeah.
I can't imagine she's any good.
Everywhere I go, people are extra nice to me until they figure out I'm not Elizabeth Smart. Guys, I want to get in shape, especially now that I'm in LA, but not that bad. If I were going to get a tattoo, I would just get a Cheeto hanging out back here. You can definitely gauge how your life is going by the amount of Netflix you can consume in a day. And the back of my arm just gave up. Jessica Simpson betrayed me and got skinny. My name is Jenna Kim, after our great leader, Kim Jong-il. I could do this all day. Jenna, did you get it?
Be nice. She could be good.
I'm just saying, you can't be a comedian and be appropriate within the Mormon context.
Hey, Singles Ward, man. That guy was funny.
He was hilarious.
Yeah.
So it does set up these expectations. Oh, my goodness, you're going to address these concerns and these misperceptions. And then she says, let's get into it. And here's some people that you need to know. And go.
Jermaine Sullivan, an African-American bishop in Atlanta. Is it just me, or is this the most, like, non-exciting person? The way I saw it is that he was picked because he's black, young, and a bishop. But other than that, he has a normal job. He hasn't saved the world in some way or overcome something huge like everyone else. So he seemed like a super nice guy.
And he has a black congregation is the other part too.
Very diverse ward, yeah.
Yeah.
And he's a hell of a dancer.
Okay, yeah.
Right, but to me, he was the second least interesting story.
Second least
interesting story of the entire thing. But okay. I liked him. I liked his family.
Sure.
And I felt I was very frustrated by what they didn't say, what they didn't explore.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, they have this whole segment on this black bishop, and they never bring up how he wrestled with accepting the priesthood ban and the temple ban for women. Right. And it's like it was such a glaring issue that was hanging over.
Huge omission.
Yeah, and anyone who knows anything about it, the history, they're like, okay, they're waiting for the moment that you had in God's Army, where the black missionary starts crying, talking about how hard it was, and they even had a scene where he's like, brother, you are being played for a fool, they made him look like an idiot in that movie, and then he's on the roof and he's talking about how he dealt with it and how he overcame it. So at least God's fucking Army was honest about it, and this documentary acted like it didn't exist. I mean,
well, and they even had Darius Gray on there speaking.
A very strong critic of how the church has dealt with racism.
That frustrated me to no end, because you should have done a section on Darius Gray and who he is and what he's done and the position he's held with the church. For those of you who don't know, Darius Gray was, if I'm not wrong, it's the president of the Genesis Group. Am I right about that?
Yeah.
And the Genesis Group was instituted back with like Joseph Fielding Smith. They're under the direction of the First Presidency, and they are effectively an auxiliary of the church to deal with and to explore, or not explore, but educate on issues pertaining to race and specifically the priesthood ban in the church. And to have him up there being interviewed, I suspect that many of the active members don't know who that man is, and certainly no non-members would know who his is. But when his name comes up, I was, oh my gosh, that's Darius Gray. That means something to me as a former Mormon.
Yeah, but I bet that I agree with you. 90% of Mormons who are watching that aren't going to have a clue who he is.
Yeah, you want to do a highlight? You want to do a full-on documentary? Do it on Darius Gray.
Yeah,
that would be interesting. But Jermaine, he nice guy, good dancer, chill hat, nice family, but like you could pick any black person with not too much trouble and have a profile that looks nice and chill like this. I mean, he didn't have any superpowers, but just he was black and Mormon, right?
Yeah, three things I wrote down. I want to know how he reconciled the priesthood ban. I want to know how he deals with his diverse congregation as it pertains to the priesthood ban. I want to know how he deals with his Baptist family, specifically his sister that they showed as having a good relationship, and saying how they reconcile this priesthood ban. And then the other thing I wrote down is I want to know what the unique issues he deals with in Atlanta as a bishop than the bishop in Salt Lake deals with.
Okay.
I wanted to know what a bishop does in Atlanta. What are the challenges and the sacrifices and the issues that he dealt with? There is a story there that I wanted to know about, both as a former Mormon and as just as a person, and they wouldn't give that to me.
The other thing that I wrote down from him was this section is when they threw out we don't have a paid clergy in the church. I don't know if you guys picked up on that, but they were talking about kind of the role of a bishop and what Matt's getting at, and they threw out this line about, well, our church is volunteer and nobody gets paid and that sort of thing. And again, none of the nuance of, well, actually there are quite a few people who get paid, and there is paid leadership, just this guy's not getting any money.
Right, and I will say this is the point where Kristen got a little vocal, and I actually told her to kind of shh. She made me a little uncomfortable because she very, very vocally said, "That's not true." And she kind of said that out loud, and so she really had a reaction of
I love
that
Kristen.
that was misleading, in that they are paid. If you want to say local leaders, at least make that clear. They made an editorial choice to include that very clearly, to highlight that point, rather than saying, okay, they could have very easily said local leaders don't get paid. And the fact that they chose to edit that differently did leave it left it very misleading.
That's deceptive.
Right.
Alison, because your husband said something interesting during this part. I think even this ward is an outlier. Alison, did your husband serve in the South?
Yeah, he lived in the South for a few years, and his ward. So he lived in like the deep South.
Sorry. Right.
Like, and he was definitely a minority as a white person, for sure. But his ward, there was like one black guy in his ward. I mean, black people are just not really Mormons, even in the deep South. And so I think that you're right. This ward seems like a super cool, diverse, kind of different ward. And I don't know, I kind of want to push back a little bit because I'm confused. So when it sounds like you're saying and I don't remember who said it, but that, this is just some normal bishop, like there's nothing special about him. So why did they include him? But like, I think that it's good that they included somebody who's kind of just a normal person, because all the other people that they, showcased are complete outliers for the most part.
But he's only shown because he's black. That's the problem.
Yeah,
it's not that he's normal. It's just that all that does is show his token blackness. And
yeah, he's just a warm up.
Yeah,
who's black.
Yeah, he's a warm up. He's like the first act, just to get us excited. And by the way, it's not diversity then, right? If they're showing, I mean, it's diversity from the church's perspective. Look at this ward that's mostly black people with a black bishop at the head of it. As far as Mormonism is concerned, that's like checking a box because that barely exists anywhere, and this is like the only one they could find. But as far as the ward itself, if you want to show diversity, then you show black and white people and Latinos and whatever all intermingling. But this was just a very calculated PR, pardon the pun, whitewash the past of our issues with blacks, and we have a whole black congregation and a black hip young guy at the head of it, and therefore we've solved it. We can wash our hands. We can move on to the next topic. We covered the toughest one. Let's go to second person, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so maybe this will clarify it a little bit. But I read an interview with one of the guys who was actually making the film. And when they wrote this up originally, they knew exactly the people, the types of people that they wanted to find. So they knew, we need to find a single mom. We need to find a professional sports person. We need to find a black bishop. We need to find somebody in, Asia that does this type of thing. I mean, they had it all storyboarded out, and then they just went out and found the people whose stories fit what they wanted to tell.
They admitted that? That seems like...
Yeah. No, I'll send... Yeah, no, it was pretty clear about it that, like, they knew the stories that they wanted to tell. It was just a matter of going out and finding
retroactively, plugging those holes.
Which I'm fine with, and from a creative standpoint. I mean, they have to make those kind of editorial choices, and so you're not going to go out and interview like every member out there. I think it's fine for them to say, well, these are the kinds of stories that we want to tell. No, let's go find people.
That goes back to the validation point then, like, because what are they documenting if they are creating a narrative to show how important they are on the world stage based on the worldly standards of these are the things that people would find interesting in terms of accomplishments and diversity and specific life experiences, and we have them as Mormons, and it's just very like calculated validation that it's not really like these are interesting stories in their own right.
Yeah.
Well, my question is did they? I guess I suspected that they drew specifically from the I'm a Mormon campaign, that these people put profiles on and that they scoured that and said those are the ones we want to highlight and turn that I'm a Mormon campaign into a feature film.
And I'm so cynical and like conspiracy minded that I have a hard time thinking that they didn't like have this huge team of researchers to look at where's the most potential growth in the, global areas for the church. Let's pick people that are of these different races so that they can have someone to identify with as they watch this movie, and it can help be a missionary tool somehow. Because they didn't do anybody from Europe, because the church is dying in Europe, right? They didn't do anybody from Africa, because Africa has crazy Ebola, and we can't go there anymore. It sent all the missionaries home. Like, no, I'm exaggerating, but I just kind of wonder about stuff like that. Is that dumb? It's probably dumb.
No, not at all. I think, this was made before Ebola was a thing, but in general, yeah, their selection process was very geographically diverse, and they do have growth targets and geographies that are untapped more than others. So, and then even in the U.S., showing a single mom, which we'll get to later, struggling with some pretty serious sin-like behavior by Mormon standards, but she did it all outside of the church, and so it needed to be helped in a beautiful way. That's like talking to a certain demographic that otherwise wouldn't think the Mormon church was a welcome place for them. So there's a lot there. I think there's some of that. Yeah.
What an opportunity to even give to give a faith-promoting narrative of the priesthood ban. That's the opportunity to say we're not racist. Not only are we not racist because we happen to choose a black bishop, but we're not racist because even with our priesthood ban, this guy is going to explain to you how he's still not just a member, but a leader of the church. And they stopped short.
No, they dodged it.
Right. No, you're right.
It really was a great opportunity. And do they really think that the people, if they want this to be a missionary tool, do they think the people watching it don't have access to Google?
Right.
They're going to find all the racist quotes and the racist history if they're really interested. And
that's the piece that makes this guy interesting. Despite all that, you're still...
Yeah, it was a great opportunity that they just ducked. They were scared to address.
But then, playing devil's advocate or church's advocate, they covered it implicitly, right? Because now we have all this intrigue hovering around him, like, oh, he's reconciled. He must have figured it out. And I guess their approach was like, people will just see that despite all this baggage, other people who are hip and cool and young come out on the other side as Mormons. Case closed. We don't need to get into it. That's enough validation.
So. Yeah, but if a non-member watches this movie, the first thing they're gonna do is Google Mormon church racism.
Yeah, and then they'll have to reconcile what they find with a cool hip guy who's a Mormon and didn't have an issue with that. So
no, I actually like that, Bob. I hadn't thought of it that before. Is that in not addressing it, they address it. So you don't need to worry about it because, and this is where again it comes to it's a message to the members. You don't need to question it because this guy doesn't question it. No,
Yeah,
I think you're absolutely right. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah, and that's why like really faithful black members, and I have a friend named Dustin, and I grew up in a ward with a black kid who was just an amazing athlete and scholar, and you get immediate status in any white ward when you're a black star in that ward, and my friend Dustin admitted to me that like one of the hardest parts of leaving the church was the status that he had because he was a black member. And why do Mormons treat star black members like this? It's because it alleviates their guilt.
Right.
It's like if he's okay with it, then I don't have to worry about it. Case closed. And
no, you're right. I'm convinced that was a intentional move to not address it. And oh man, that you guys just blew my mind.
Okay, let's move on to the next story.
All right, so Ken, football coach dude, Naval Academy dude, temper tantrum dude.
I want to address this real quick because I don't know if you all have seen Game of Honor. It's a documentary that was done back in 2011, which is the Army-Navy game. Has anyone seen that?
No.
It was on Showtime, and it's not on Netflix. I looked where else you could see it. You can't. You got to rent it. But it was not on Showtime. It was a compelling. It was a great documentary on the rivalry between Army and Navy. This coach Ken Niulatalomo was also a presence in this film. It was one of the better documentaries that I've seen. And to see that he was on that, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. This is going to be kind of a mini-sode, as it were, on the Game of Honor. To me, it was the most boring vignette of all the sixth. And this was the most boring, and the Sullivan piece, the one we just talked about, was to me the second most boring.
So I think this was a complete miss for the wider church audience, which is largely out of the U.S., because it creates more questions than provides answers. My wife not being from the U.S., even though she's lived here now for like 12 plus years, you see like a Navy football team playing, an Air Force football team. President Obama's giving this guy awards. There's planes flying over. It's a fucking football game that's made up, and it makes no sense to anyone who's watching it in another country. That's like, what is this? Why do we care? Why is money being wasted? What's the story here? It just like, why is this a thing? Does anyone want to take that and explain it?
Yeah, this is like, I'd be confused if there were like Buddhists talking about playing lacrosse or something. Like I wouldn't understand what the connection was.
Right.
So
like to me, it was just kind of a, hey, football. Everybody likes football. Let's throw in some football scenes here.
No, it was football / patriotism. So this is to Mormons and their patriot, the flyovers and all that.
The nationalism,
yes. American-centric. And by the way, the proper pronunciation of his name is Niumatololo. Matt.
That's what I said. I said booty trap.
But doesn't it seem like just over the top, like the whole President Obama thing with the planes flying, just like it seems like it's trying to make a larger statement, like there's significance, there's huge impact that this guy is having, but he's a coach of a made-up football team that nobody, like what, I hate to be so cynical, but it's just like, this is the grand achievement that Mormons, that you need to showcase. Is it just for the Obama shot? Is that what this is about? Like, why would I take this seriously?
I think it adds a lot of legitimacy for the audience to say that, oh, look at this guy, he's up there. And I do agree with what you're saying. It was almost like they were making him look like a general or something. You know, like he might just be a coach, but it's Navy, and he's a big deal. So
he's like the Polynesian Captain Moroni.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, and
Well,
he has
for
like
somebody like me who I don't give any
two shits
fucks.
about this.
I give no fucks about football. Sorry, Randy.
That is some salty language.
I like it.
I just know you like it when I say fuck. So, no, for me, who I don't know anything about football, I don't really care about it. When he's a football coach, blah blah blah, I don't really care. And then they were like, oh, and I realized he's a Navy. He's the football coach for the Navy college team. I was impressed.
Really? You didn't? Your first thought wasn't like, why does the Navy have a fucking football team?
I think that I have enough background knowledge to know.
Bob, you're such a nerd.
Those are big rivals.
I'm not a nerd. I'm asking a legitimate question. It's like,
how many times have you said made up football team?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're all kind of made up in the same way.
Yes, it's the redundancy department of redundancy.
Yeah, like the 49ers, the 1849 gold miners didn't just decide to field a team of footballers that has been in existence.
Right. But
the Detroit Lions are actually lions.
Let's just like go through the countries and see how many of them have national football teams. Let's just start there. You know,
Liverpool, Manchester United, Man City.
Yeah, they all have soccer teams or you know, some equivalent. I mean, it's just all sports just kind of fake. You know.
Right, but it's not armies fighting each other in their, or you know, competing against each other. It's just weird. It's just an American weird thing.
Well, it's not that it's the Navy. It's the Naval Academy. Right. I mean, it's like it's a war college team. So that's what it is.
What it is.
That's true.
It's the Navy War College.
That's true. They do actually engage in real war.
All right, enough on that. I've made my point. But apparently he has a temper problem, but he has a Gordon B. Hinckley quote that makes it all better, right?
I thought that part was awesome because it's like, what football coach out there doesn't have a temper problem? I mean, if anybody's ever played football, I guarantee your coach lost his temper like at least every other game.
Right.
My high school football coach had dentures, and he was screaming at me, cursing all the words in the book so vehemently that his teeth shot out of his mouth. He caught them, and he kept cussing at me for not knowing the play or not making the right block or something.
Yeah, but we're Mormons, and we have that too. It's okay. We struggle. We do things like the rest of the world, but not just. But we control it.
Right.
Yeah, I think they tapped into this because this kind of culture is really important to Mormons. Mormons really look at the athletic world as kind of a metaphor for life, and if you've, I don't know if you guys remember when BYU played Notre Dame, they had a series. It was almost like which church is true, whichever team wins.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, the church loves this shit.
Yeah.
So we need to. With this guy, we also have to address his church calling, right?
Oh, he looks so bored at church. Did you guys notice that? He looked so bored.
I was getting the heebie-jeebies watching that, like flashbacks, and it felt weird. I didn't enjoy that. The scenes of primary.
Was he Sunday school or primary teacher? What was he?
He was primary. It was 10-year-olds teaching them how to be modest. That was the scene they left in.
Oh, that's creepy.
Right.
So, yeah, that's the part that I'm like, if anybody with a discerning eye who isn't a Mormon sees that, they might wonder what's going on about why you need to teach a little kid that tattoos are bad and modesty is good. And then it is funny how they juxtaposed him being bored out of his mind in the pews while they're saying, some of us prepare differently. He doesn't train his players on Sunday, and it's controversial, but that's because he's preparing in a different way. And then it shows him like nodding off practically. Like, okay.
Yeah.
Well, this was something that was funny in BYU culture. How many of you guys went to BYU?
I did for a year.
Okay. Did you ever go to Taco Bell at midnight on Sunday? Like at the end of Sunday, midnight?
Like once. Yeah, I think I did that once.
The line was so long
right.
on the drive-thru because they would not break the Sabbath. And everybody has anyone who's Mormon has friends or family who, went to college and they would not study on Sunday, but they would like set their alarm and wake up at midnight on Monday and start studying. This pharisaical ridiculousness. And that's exactly what he's doing, because every other college coach in America, other than BYU, they have coach meetings on Sunday to go over the film, what happened on Saturday. Mm-hmm. And what does he do? He gets up at 4 o'clock in the morning on Monday. It's like, what is the point of this? I mean, what does this prove morally?
That's him feeling like he's sacrificing. He makes such a big sacrifice so that he can keep the commandments.
Yeah,
so
but he's probably working the exact same amount of hours as anyone else, but just doing it stupidly.
Right.
For an arbitrary moral code.
Right. And teaching modesty to 10-year-olds. It's like all of this morality just wrapped into one package with a nice bow on it in his life example. Anyway.
Okay, let's go to Costa Rica.
Yeah. Apparently he was also a bishop previously, so he wasn't just teaching 10-year-olds. And the other thing you guys missed out on is they did interview an assistant coach as if he was a non-Mormon, and the dude that they interviewed was a fucking Mormon, by the way.
Oh, boy.
Make it sound like this is what I learned from this guy.
Was that the guy that was like, he's the best man I've ever met?
Yeah, it was the guy that looked like a return missionary. He was a return missionary.
Well, by the way, I think he was the guy that had the line, "We're not going to have meetings on Sunday. We're going to get killed." So that was like a total hey,
plant.
Feed this line to this guy and have him say it, and he's actually a Mormon.
Wow,
that's deceptive.
Yeah, no, it was very deceptive. But as it does play on the patriotism of members, and I disagree with you guys. I think the whole football thing this is again why it's to members, because members do get up on not just patriotism but on football, and it's like, this is a cool thing. But it does go, this is not a diverse guy. This is a guy who happens to make a ton of money for coaching football. So let's not suggest that this is a guy who is sacrificing anything. This is a guy who makes a ton of money, and is a rich man here in the in the Midwest now, coaching this team. But the thing that again they dodged on is or didn't even cover. There is interesting stuff about this guy. This is a guy who is the first Polynesian head football coach in the in the Division I.
And they don't bring that up.
Not even a mention of that. This kind of stuff is interesting. Is his Polynesian background, how that plays in, and you see that because you see the leis and that he wears at every game, and so that influences things. But they don't even talk about that because they decided again to focus on what makes him not interesting, not compelling, the fact that he happens to be Mormon.
Yeah, well, I do want to emphasize one point you made. The average tenured philosophy professor at the Naval Academy probably makes about 1/12 of what he makes.
Wow. You got to be rich to be in a documentary for Mormons. Okay. So Costa Rica, Carolina? How does she pronounce the name?
Costa Rica.
Yeah, kick-ass.
Señorita Marín.
Yes.
Kickboxer. Catholic
Kickboxer.
family.
She reminded me of Marta from Arrested Development.
Okay.
Job's girlfriend. Anyway.
Nice reference.
Thanks.
So it starts off with, this story is going to challenge how you might think of gender roles in the home. And I just thought we're going right to that and kind of overcompensating from the get-go. I mean, it just is a weird implication because
this is highlighted as, okay, so the first one was the bishop, the next one was the coach, and this one is the fighter. And they initially start with this woman's husband, and you think, okay, this is a boxer in Costa Rica. In Costa Rica, this is something we can kind of think about, a Hispanic male boxer, but no, the fighter is the woman.
Dun dun dun.
And it's Costa Rica.
What did I say?
Costa Rica.
I just want to let it fly.
That's what I said. I said booty trap.
So yeah,
that's two data references.
I'm actually interested in Alison's take on this female boxer.
Yeah, Alison, female.
Token female. Well, I thought she was badass.
Hey, are you accusing us of doing the same thing?
No.
As a documentary? Okay.
No, I mean, I thought it was interesting in the beginning too, where they talk about, this story's going to challenge your views of traditional gender roles. Like that, I think is more proof that it's towards Mormons, because you don't know necessarily what my views are on traditional gender roles. You know what I mean? Like it's just making an assumption that might not be correct. And then I don't know. It was surprising. It did surprise me. I didn't really see it coming that she was going to be this awesome fighter. I don't think that I didn't have any problems with it. Like I just thought this segment was really cool. I think it would be empowering for women to see that that Mormon women, maybe they could be something more than just, stay-at-home mom.
Alison, you're a horrible feminist. Let me play the feminist role here. This is actually a very nefarious approach to gender roles.
Okay, wait, but let me
You're
finish.
so cynical.
Let me finish what I think about it. You are talking over me a lot, and you need to stop it.
All right. You know what? Like Randy says, earn your fucking position.
Okay, so the thing that really did bother me about it was how she said, I don't want to go professional because I don't want to sacrifice my family or my marriage or anything like that. And I thought that was kind of like, if you don't want to be a professional at this, then that's okay. But is she saying that because of what she's learned from the church and what she's learned about her role and what it's supposed to be? Probably, almost definitely. Or is she saying it because she truly just feels that in her heart? And could you ever tell the difference? I don't know. Probably not. I know that as a Mormon, I had immense guilt about ever thinking about having a job or a hobby that would take me outside of the home. And now that I'm not a Mormon, I love working. I absolutely don't know how I went without working for so long. So, yeah, that part bugged me. But okay, tell me why I'm a horrible feminist, which I
hold on. Before Matt goes into that, let me set it up with a quote here, because I wrote this down word for word because it had outraged me. This is quote: "Many people think that women should be subject to men, but in the church it isn't that way."
Oh my God!
That was from
the movie.
Yeah, that was from the husband's friend or somebody who was in the ward.
Probably that was Mormon plant again.
Yeah, it was basically saying that's word. I wrote it down word for word when that happened, and I was like, okay, so women in the church aren't subject to men. Okay, this is news.
Well, I think that women in the church tell themselves that they're not. But
they tell themselves that they're not, and the church apparently now is telling everyone that they're not. But when the church leadership is comprised 100% of men, it's kind of hard to say that they're not. Anyway, go ahead, Matt. What were you going to say? Tell us why Alison's a terrible feminist.
All right. I'm sure Alison is a fine feminist. But the reason why this particular woman did not challenge gender roles is because all they did is say, oh, this woman is... they masculinized her by making her a fighter, saying, look how masculine she can be by punching other women, right? But yet when it comes to the real core of being a feminist or of challenging gender roles, she's a stay-at-home mom. She won't go and go become a professional boxer. She won't go extend beyond this hobby. So yeah, she's masculine in that she's a fighter and she's aggressive, but yet she can still be hot and they say that's not me. That's her saying I really want to be feminine when I'm outside of the ring and I want to put my makeup on and I want to get dressed. And even people comment on, are you the same person in the ring? Because you're so cute and you're so pretty. And so they actually reinforce the very gender stereotypes the church tries to reinforce in this film. And that's what the Mormons are highlighting. But when it comes down to real gender roles, a real challenging those roles would have been that she does work outside of the home, that she does something beyond just have a hobby. They equated what she did to doing crafting, and that was offensive.
That was one part. Did you guys notice that pissed me off? The narrator, she was talking about how, this is what do other people think of her hobby? And she like laughed when she said that this is her hobby. Did you guys notice that?
Yeah. Oh, that's so cute.
Well,
what she does is so cute.
On the other side, though, I thought this was probably my favorite story because I thought it was the most interesting, and I was like conflicted because I saw some of Matt's points and some of Alison's points at the same time, but I thought they ended with some interesting, middle ground progressive stuff that's independent of the church using this story to promote an agenda of deflecting gender issues. Leaving that aside, the actual story itself, apparently they started their own business. She's not taking care of the kids in the morning. She's working out. She's the one who is more of a fighter than the husband. They run this business together. So she's not like completely stay-at-home traditional, this is only a hobby. They've like entrepreneurs. They've made a business out of it. She's the one that's in the spotlight more. She has better fighting skills than he does. Like, I thought there was some interesting stuff there. I don't think it's completely the Matt version.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
It was a good story.
She would kick my ass. She was tough.
She was tough.
Yeah, and she wasn't wearing garments through like 3/4 of her. I'm just saying, just throwing it out there.
It's true.
I don't know.
But the fact that she's tough doesn't challenge gender roles. And that's what I find it was such a misdirection.
Yeah, we agree on that for sure.
Yeah, a strong woman that is out there and that can be a leader in the home. The closest thing to challenging gender roles was the fact that while she's out training and running, her husband is getting the kids ready and doing dinner or doing breakfast and doing these types of things. That was the closest thing to challenging gender roles than anything else.
Well, and maybe this is my millennial.
Because it does challenge the church's gender roles. And there's even a quote from, I don't know, it was some apostle in 2000 about how women shouldn't be tough and how women shouldn't be boxing and fighting. And
femininity is part of your inner beauty. Be proud of your womanhood. Enhance it. Unfortunately, we see some very poor role models of womanhood in today's society. We see women boxers and wrestlers as we flip through the television channels trying to find something uplifting. I believe the women of our time need to be strong, but not in that sense. In my opinion, these activities demean the nobility of womanhood.
And it was said in like general conference. So it depends on whose perspective you're looking from. If you're looking from the church's perspective, she most definitely challenged gender roles. If you're looking from a feminist perspective, no, not necessarily.
Right. And again, this gets to the issue of outliers,
Right.
She's a huge outlier in the church in terms of like general, millennials. And I think there's a big generational kind of bait and switch that they're doing here. She's not much of an outlier, but like, I think for me, I don't know, maybe it's similar for the rest of you, but like, I'm 31. It's not uncommon at all for me to be giving my kids baths in the morning, getting them breakfast, getting them going, like putting them to bed at night. I come if there's something that needs to happen at home, like I will take off work. I'm not saying that I'm like a Mr. Mom or anything, but like this idea that like, oh wow, the dad's making breakfast for the kids, like it's so patronizing. Like, well, yeah, so what? Like, I mean, he's a dad. Like that's what it's just that stuff bugs me. Like,
no, you're right. Really
patronizing.
I do a lot of the cooking in the home, and you're right, Scott. Laundry and those types of things. So it is a generational thing, and again, to me that was the closest thing to challenging gender roles. He was still an attorney. The husband was an attorney, and she was working in home, and they made it clear that they made a decision not to. That she could very easily go professional. She could be a professional fighter today, and they made a decision not to, so that she could maintain the gender roles that are established by the church. And in fact, when they show her giving the talk in church, and what does she highlight? The proclamation to the family.
Yeah, that was a bit much there. I didn't like that. I was hoping... I like the way Alison framed it at the beginning, though. I think there's a lot of, you can't tell where one starts and one stops, her own personal attachment to her kids and what she wants out of life and what the church is doing to influence her. So I want to step back because I don't like, trying to put thoughts into her head, this person, or I don't know, it just feels weird. I don't know what motivates her, but certainly the church abused the story. We can just leave it at that.
Right. Okay, Candy Bomber.
No, we Candy Bomber's at the end.
Oh.
No. We got
Candy Bomber's next. No, Missionaries at the end. We got Candy Bomber. Yeah, I wrote these down in order.
The single mom is at the end, right?
Yeah, single mom's at the end. The missionary story. We got Candy Bomber, and then we got Bishnu in Nepal. Kathmandu, the center of Mormonism.
Okay, Candy Bomber bored me, so...
Yeah.
Candy Bomber was the History Channel...
Candy Bomber bored you?
It was an endearing, it was a thoughtful thing, but it was just long, and I got it pretty quickly, and then I was like, all right, cool, next. I guess it was at that point in the movie where I was like, hey, I just saw a fighter woman thing going on. I don't know. You guys loved it? All right, talk.
He couldn't get the hot Costa Rican out of his mind.
Oh, no.
The 92-year-old white guy wasn't doing it.
Stereotyping, jeez. Yeah, okay,
You're
so
right,
what did you love about him?
This segment sounded had the look and feel of History Channel. It really did. But it was an interesting story, and
sure,
it was just another example of how just a good guy had a good idea, and they attached, or they gave he gives credit to the church for it. And that's what I found was annoying. Is this guy is a great guy. I'm inspired by him, but it had to be about him having the Holy Ghost prompt him when he was at the fence at the Berlin Wall, and he gave a couple of sticks of gum to the kids, and the church did nothing to help him with this. It was all the U.S. government. He was just a guy who happened to be Mormon, who had a really kind idea because he's a kind person, and he gives all the credit to the church when it was the U.S. fucking government that loved his idea and ran with it.
Yeah, and the church is going to totally milk it for all it's worth and be like, see, it's because of us. It's because of Mormonism in this weird, ambiguous, abstract way that made so that this story, this nice person wouldn't have done this nice thing, that we wouldn't have this story today if he wasn't Mormon. That's the implied message, right?
Yeah.
That's the thread.
Right. So just to give context to the story for anybody who isn't familiar with the Candy Bomber, this was post World War II when Berlin was divided, and West Berlin was basically surrounded by Soviet influence, and they had blockaded the entire city off, the entire kind of Allied supported branch of the city was blocked off. So there was this long blockade, and they couldn't get food, they couldn't get anything in, and so the U.S. military and some of the basically all the Allied forces were flying in just massive amounts of food. This is kind of like really early Cold War, but they eventually broke this blockade so that they could get trucks taken in, and this American service member who was flying planes under the command of the Royal Air Force had this idea to drop, basically their candy rations is how it started. They were dropping those out of planes because they just, they were bringing these planes in like every 90 seconds all day long that are just loaded up with food for this whole city. So eventually that grew to this big program where all of the planes were dropping them dropping candy all day long, and it was this big morale boost for West Berlin. So there's all these Berliners now that remember it.
And candy companies were donating candy for the project.
Yeah, like Hershey's is sending over, shipments and things like that of candy and chocolate and whatever that they would send over. So
the
guy who started it was Mormon.
Yeah.
For me, this was a story that if I weren't quite so cynical, I totally would have cried. All those little kids having candy.
Oh,
it's really touching. But like Randy said, I mean, this guy could have just as easily been a Mormon service member who was kind of a jerk, but he's a Mormon service member who's a nice guy, and so he had a nice, he did a really nice thing and kind of stuck his neck out to start this. And it ended up going really well, but there's nothing in the church that would teach you to throw candy out of an airplane. Like, I mean, that has no correlation with like church teaching any more than any other religion would have the same kind of correlation to like be nice to people and go out of your way. Like, there's nothing specific to Mormonism here. So
did any of you have the same thought I did? Because they showed footage of the candy being dropped. Did any of you have the thought that how many kids were killed or trampled trying to get to the candy?
Yeah, because these are like the B-roll footage that they were showing was like streets just packed with little kids, and they're just running around like ants, running over each other to try to grab right. half of a candy bar.
There was clearly not enough candy for the throngs that were present. And,
yeah, like they're up in,
it just seemed like
trees and on rooftops and everything.
It just seemed like a really dangerous situation, actually.
God, ruin it for me, Randy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
I know.
All right, Bob, take us to Kathmandu.
Okay. Bishnu at Hikari, an engineer who organizes humanitarian projects in the Himalayas. I just thought the Travel Channel was doing a great job between the Himalayas and Costa Rica. They were already on my bucket list, but anyway, it was a nice little plug. So this one was all about.
There was lots of cool beats.
Yeah, the cinematography was excellent.
No, I was just saying the B-roll on this was breathtaking.
Yeah,
I would want to go there.
I will admit, for some reason, I became really distracted and did not process this one at all. And I don't know if it's because it was the fifth of six or what, but whatever.
It was kind of a poorly executed story, in my opinion, because as far as I could tell, he's not from the U.S. He pushes hard to leave his hometown, which is like, farming on the mountainside, to go be like a high-tech, Silicon Valley kind of guy. Does that for a little while, but then realizes, no, I need to go back and help my own people. Comes back and starts helping in a humanitarian way, and then we just kind of cut to him reconciling with his father, which is another glossed over, I have a family member who's not Mormon, and we're totally cool, and we've got a few of those in this quote unquote documentary. And then we see his daughter talking and saying how he's a goofy dancer. She says goofy dancing like 5 times, and it all seems fine, but it's like the story wasn't as cohesive or interesting outside of just the geography. Maybe that's a mean thing to say. I mean, he's a humanitarian. I'm sure he's doing wonderful things, but they didn't go into it as much. I guess he helps them figure out how to get water to their villages and stuff like that. Is there anything I'm missing?
His two main thrusts were educating the village and getting them fresh water. And, this guy is my hero. Like, I love this guy. And again, there was no help or the church had nothing to do with this. He was just a great guy who had a humanitarian thread in his being that led him to do these great things to get education and water to these people. But again, to me it was like the church taking credit for it. And and the other part of the story was it dismisses the cultural imperialism that Mormonism wreaks on with these 19 to 21-year-old white American missionaries throughout the world. They tried to act like, oh, he's totally cool with his Hindu past, and he kisses his father's feet as per Hindu tradition. But they don't, it glosses over what Mormons try to do when they go to these other countries. And I served in Tempe, Arizona, so you guys that served abroad could probably speak to the cultural imperialism that was inherent in your missionary work.
Yeah, well, the part that got me in this segment about that was like where they show the sacrament meeting inside this branch in Kathmandu, and you've got all these people that are wearing white shirts playing, 19th century Protestant hymns on a piano and singing Hosanna in a language that doesn't, it's like so out of place, and there's just, it doesn't, it's such a stark contrast to the rest of the footage where these people are, living with the traditional culture, and then boom, you're inside the ward house and everything looks just like it would in Utah, except, the color of the people's faces.
Right.
Yeah, I agree. I think that
Alison?
this part of them was really missed an opportunity for like showing the part of the culture there especially that you touched on, Randy, that it's just so awful how they come in and missionaries come in and they just think that they are going to teach you everything you need to know with no respect to the culture. But they also glossed over like why he was trying to get clean water there. They didn't go into any real of the major problems that these people have just getting water, which would be such a compelling part of the story. They just didn't even mention that. He's saving lives, really. And it was just like, oh yeah, and I'm
Absolutely.
a Mormon.
That's like an afterthought.
I'm glad that you saw through that, Randy, and you connected with him as a good person in that way. Because I think I was in Matt territory where I was a little distracted and almost like bored, or this story was like, oh, humanitarian, and that was just the placeholder term. Like, oh, I guess he's doing something good, but it just didn't tell his story. Like, it didn't give it the light of day that it deserved. It just I didn't get it that well, so it's too bad.
Yeah, this guy is what I wish I was. He gave up the Silicon Valley job to go back to his people and to give real help. And fresh drinking water is the biggest problem in the world. It's the biggest cause of diseases and death. And he goes back to his country and just gets shit done. He's an amazing, wonderful person, and I salute him.
Nice. So should we talk about Dawn Armstrong, missionary mom?
Yeah, let's
in Utah, struggling.
Let's do it. Last one.
Oh, I didn't even know her name. This is where I tuned out.
Really?
This
is like the most. This was like the most controversial one.
Story.
Yeah, the rest of these were kind of softballs, and then this is the one where the churchiness of it is dialed up.
Yes, this
one's way dialed up. Yeah.
I just think that I tuned out because I don't know.
This one's the longest too. This was like 20 minutes, wasn't it?
Well, and that's a good point, Scott. Is that I heard this was like 90 minutes long, but it's not. It's like 78 minutes long, so it's a very, very short film. But for me, it did feel longer than that. It felt like 2.5 hours.
So this one's the story about a single mom. She got pregnant when she was 16. She had this baby. She got pregnant again by the same father, lost the second baby, and basically was homeless and struggling on the street with this new child as a teenager, and didn't know what to do, and basically got tracked out by the sister missionaries.
All right, let's not lose sight of the fact that these are biracial, or her children were biracial. I think that becomes an important fact, but
black father.
But absolutely, all the things you said were, and they threw this in, and this is where I sent an email to one of y'all or to I think all of you guys, and said this is where the film becomes like Cypher in the Snow, when they kind of start going to the second child and the fact that it dies very, very early on. This is where I start getting choked up, because when you start talking about freaking, babies dying and the struggles and the suffering that you go through and having to bury your child, yeah, that hits me just to the core as a human and as a person who feels empathy for other people.
I mean, there was an opportunity there again for them to talk about, I don't know, like what it's like to be a single mom who has to bury your child. But it was glossed over in favor of her missionary son, who's sacrificing, saving up all this money to do, to pay for his mission. And the most important way he prepares for it is buying his suits, is what they're showing. That's his preparation.
Was he at Mr. Mac?
Yeah.
I think that was Mr. Mac that they were at. And I wanted to know, how did he have his name tag already?
Oh, that was
he had his name tag on at his house when he's like saying goodbye to his family.
Yeah, you don't get that.
That's bogus. That's totally bogus. Yeah.
But it's so funny, Alison. What you're saying is the real interesting story is how she survived and what it's like to live on the streets as a single mom in America. And the story became about her son going on a mission and buying suits.
Exactly.
Well, her story again, we have the coach. We have the bishop, we have the coach, we have the fighter, we have the philanthropist, we have the war hero, and now we have the missionary mom. That's her identity.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. This was the only story.
Her whole worth. Well, her whole worth is through her son.
Right.
Right.
They conspicuously left out career paths and decisions. We know nothing about this family. We know that they have money because their house is probably one of the nicest ones on display. But they didn't like talk about what they do, who they are today. It was just this. It was very, very singular. For being the longest segment, it was conspicuously missing certain key characteristics that were present in every other segment. I just found that interesting.
Right. I agree with you. And I was very frustrated by that because, as they're looking at their lifestyle, clearly they do well. Clearly they're affluent, and that's not that matters, but it would be nice to highlight that there had to have been some struggle, sometime between her being what was presumed to be a drug addicted 16-year-old with a toddler to the wife of a very affluent Salt Lake City white guy, 20 years later. What is the progress there?
Did they talk about how her husband lost his leg at all?
No, they didn't. They just said that he only had the one leg, but they didn't talk about how he lost it.
No, it was that's how he can connect with his biracial adopted or stepchild, because he too is different. And I thought, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Those two things are so in opposite.
Yeah, I'm handicapped like you being black.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
Exactly. It was fucking offensive.
All of that. I must have been so done with this fucking movie by the end.
No, and I'll tell you, I'm offended because I'm a fucking adopted parent of a brown child. And to equate those two things offended me at my core, because this is about my essence as a father and my daughter's, as a daughter. To just kind of gloss over that really pissed me off, quite frankly.
Yeah, I can see that.
You've been pretty pissed all night.
That's not true. I've got some very positive things coming for the church coming. It's coming, Randy.
Well, let's hear it, because I think we're about done.
We're running out of steam. Yeah,
okay,
we covered all the stories.
This is a part.
The end.
So this is the part where I did get choked up and I felt the Spirit. I told you guys, hey, I got choked up and felt the Spirit, and I did. I got choked up over this piece, and I was able to, I guess, connect with this family because of the connection to this what is clearly physically a different child, and they just embraced this kid. And again, I think there's more to be said for that. When you're you're a guy who's marrying or is dating this girl who happens to have a biracial child. They just kind of glossed over that they talked to the parents of this Mormon kid, and well, of course, if you love him, we will love this boy too. To say that there's not maybe some more to that. Now, again, I connected with that because when we told our parents we're adopting this girl who happens to be brown, they embraced her as much as if they of any of their grandchildren. So to me, that just connected to me emotionally. So when I say I felt the spirit, meaning I felt some emotion, some personal emotion towards this story than I did with other stories because it was personal to me. And so the extent that I said I felt the spirit was that I felt I felt emotion and connected to these people in this last little story, and I felt connected as the missionary. I was a missionary. You all were missionaries, and that process of I've never had to send a missionary on a kid, my son, my child on a mission, but that was the first time, both as a missionary, as a kid, and as a parent, I could empathize with both of those situations, both the kid leaving and then the parent not wanting that kid to go home, and that struck me emotionally, and I felt for both of those people at the same time, and it really impacted me.
Wow, so you must have just in the moment glossed over like the Mormon idiosyncrasies of like having a huge party for opening, your mission call with the envelope on display and like everybody coming over and food being laid out so everyone can discover where you're going to serve your mission. That was
totally my experience. To a
you were in
T.
one of those families.
Absolutely.
No, I wasn't.
Like
I walked in.
I was just say I was pretty much by myself when I ran my mission call. I can remember exactly where I was in my kitchen, and then I opened up and it said Arizona Tempe, and I thought it said Arizona Temple Mission, and and because just one L added to Tempe makes Temple, and I honestly thought for about 3 seconds that I was going to be a visitor center missionary.
Oh, that's funny.
But the reality wasn't that much better. And then I just yelled 3 times. There was one other person in the room, so I wasn't by myself. There was one of my siblings was in the room, and I just yelled Tempe, or I yelled Arizona over 3 times, being from Southern fucking California, and I just threw a big temper tantrum. So this guy's seen, when he says, I'm going to Johannesburg, South Africa, or whatever the fucking South Africa was, and everyone cheers. And I leaned over to Alison and her husband. I said, what if it had said Boise, Idaho? Would there have been a big cheer?
He already had his name tag. I'm sure his call was already, meddled with so that it was somewhere cool. Not like Tooele, Utah or something. Okay, so let's go around the horn and everybody give their rating for this thing.
Well, before we do that,
I love this.
Let's talk about the critics. So as of yesterday, Rotten Tomatoes had 0. They had 8 critics actually have to sit through this, and the common theme from critics was, why would anyone pay $10.50 or whatever it is to watch a propaganda infomercial? So if they were trying to reach a non-Mormon audience, they failed miserably.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, and I feel like, though, in defense of the medium, this is one of the most pure documentaries that's out there because it's so on the nose with what it's documenting. It is precisely 100% documenting how the Mormon Church wants people to perceive it. And most documentaries are more nuanced, and they look at multiple angles. They have sometimes qualitative balance with quantitative analysis on an issue. This is none of that. It's just like purely 100% an institution that wants a certain image, and that's what's documented. So it's from that perspective, it's not too bad. It fulfills what it set out to do.
Well, not only is it
it belongs in the visitor center. It would be a fantastic, probably the best visitor center video they've ever made.
not only did the critics hate it, but contrast that with the audience report is over 91% on Rotten Tomatoes. So you have 0% critics and 91% on Rotten Tomatoes audience positive. That disparity doesn't exist in any other film. And to me, that speaks to the cultishness of the church, the fact that nobody has the balls to say, yeah, this movie was okay, it wasn't great. Every Mormon that goes and attends this film has to say it was one of the greatest movies they've ever seen.
They want to say that. They probably truly feel that. Don't you think?
Oh, I agree with you. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
I bought a ticket to Left Behind. That was my contribution.
Oh, did you?
Why would you do that? Why?
Because
That's horrible.
Because it was the same. It was the same. I didn't even know what it was about. I just saw that it was a Nicolas Cage movie, and it was at the same time. And I was like, "Oh, that's plausible." I'm going to that other movie.
Oh my gosh, God, that's worse.
Dude, it can't
That's
be
the
worse.
only
How could it
worst
be
choice
worse?
you could have made.
You couldn't have picked some random rated R movie?
Like
I
Gone
didn't
Girl?
even know. I didn't even know what it was.
Annabelle,
I just
like
saw
I
that.
do.
Sorry, did I bum you guys out because I bought
That
the
really
wrong
does, actually,
ticket?
Scott.
No.
Yeah, you contributed to the numbers of a fundamentalist evangelical machine. So fuck you.
It was on accident. Jesus.
Oh my God.
I didn't even know what it was until Matt just told me.
And you're like, oh, good bet. Like,
Yeah, Nicolas Cage has only done great stuff lately.
No, that's not what. Yeah. Well,
So I wanted.
that guy's in the toilet. Oh man, his career just tanked.
I used
Jeez.
to love Nicolas Cage.
Me too, but ever since his bankruptcy, he's just taken like every role he could get, and they're awful.
Yes.
I was going to buy a ticket to Annabelle, and Bob and Randy shamed me into not doing that, and so I bought a film. I actually paid for Meet the Mormons.
Yeah.
Well, that's the worst thing you could do.
I guess.
Oh,
It's worse than Left Behind.
I disagree.
No,
it's the first time I've felt guilt since I left the church. But I paid for that movie.
yeah,
It was a matinee. If it makes you feel any better, it was only $5.50.
Yeah.
Well, my ranking is Meet the Mormons, Annabelle, then Left Behind. So you guys that picked the ones below, you're dead to me.
Wait,
Okay.
so you're saying you would rather buy a ticket to Meet the Mormons, then Annabelle, then Left Behind?
Yeah, because I really, really hate the Warrens from Connecticut. The husband is dead, but they were the biggest ghost con artists in American history, and I hate them. I hate them. Like with every fiber of my being, I hate the Warrens.
All right.
And I don't.
Sounds like you have a well articulated argument there.
Yes,
Randy.
it's an emotion. It's an argument from emotional disgust. So it's an absolute logical fallacy. But Left Behind, just what the religious right is trying to do in schools and to women in America. That's the worst. And that's the one you picked, Scott.
Yeah, that's all my fault.
I actually read like the first 3 books of that series. It's horrible. Ugh. I gave the money to Red Cross. Hopefully, if it makes money, but we'll never know because the books aren't open.
Yeah.
So, do you want to hear my positive spin?
Okay.
Sure.
I thought we already did.
No, I don't think so.
No.
I don't think I've been positive yet. So, and I will attribute this to somebody that I spoke to afterwards. And there's people that I spoke to afterwards that I've known for really all my life. And one of them said something funny. They said, "I'm so glad the church told us to come. I really enjoyed that movie." And I thought that was just an interesting turn of a phrase, that the church told us to go because I really enjoyed that film. Just to kind of highlighting that they didn't do this willingly, that they did it out of duty, but they were glad they did it. But then
It's like service.
Yeah, it is. You're right, Bob. And then, but the other piece is, in speaking to somebody, they said, I look at those people and I realize that those people exist, and it makes me want to be better. And that's where I say at the very beginning that this film is a message and a lesson to members of quit being so so focused on your own culture and the culture of Utah, the middle class and upper middle class white culture, because these people are your people too. So to me, it was a message to the members of be a little nicer, be a little better to other people who look differently than you, and that maybe that's the message of the I'm the Mormon campaign too, not to tell the rest of the world that, hey, all these people are cool and hip, but to tell the rank and file Mormons in Utah and in California and in Idaho and in Arizona, there are people that are different than you, and that's okay. That's my charitable approach to this film.
Yeah,
that's like a backhanded bitch slap.
That was very kind. Almost to the point where I'm skeptical of your motivations behind giving it.
No, I'm telling you, this is pure, Randy.
I don't think it's that kind. That's like saying, oh, it's only manipulation. It's not abuse. I don't know how that's that much better.
I'm going to give my quick take, and then we'll have let's just do Alison, Bob, and then Scott. Since you're the Elders Quorum president, you can give the final take.
Wait, can we all do our numbers though? Can I give my how many out of 10 out of 5?
Who gives a shit? Okay.
Well, I want to touch on Bob's because I have something to say to Bob.
I'm sure you do.
No, I give it a 1.5 to 2 stars out of 5.
Okay, let's leave it at that.
That's high praise.
Okay, why a scale of 5? Let's go 10. You don't have to do half.
Scale. You just double the score if you do 10. It's whatever. All right.
I know, but then you don't have to do halves. All right. My take on this movie is whatever. So my take is this was a story about 6 amazing, interesting people, and it's just another example of the church taking something that's really interesting and making it a mile wide and an inch deep. And it's so disappointing, and production value was fantastic. Some of the shots they had were breathtaking. Again, the people were amazing, but all they did this for was to say, look at these amazing people, and ostensibly they did it because they're Mormon faith, and that's all that they're presenting to the world. And so, artistically, production value is high. Artistically, it's really low, but I put a lot more weight, as you guys know, from the Mountain of the Lord. I put a lot more weight on the artistic value. So I give it about a 1 out of 5.
That's bullshit. All right, who's next?
Wait, can I say one more thing on that?
Thanks for the...
Matt?
What?
Just say it, Matt. Go ahead.
The other thing I wanted to say is the whole thing about this is all I could think about was the Lego movie. That everything is awesome.
Everything is awesome.
It's just
everything is cool
when you join the church. Yes, it was like that is all I kept thinking about is that there's no conflict, there's no problems, there's no troubles once you join the church. The problems were in the past. The missionary woman, the missionary mother had issues, had problems because she wasn't a member of the church. But once she joined the church, everything became awesome. And that was kind of a theme, I thought, in each of the vignettes to a degree. And that was so maddening to me.
Okay, before we
everything
go on,
is awesome.
Bob, back up your backhand or your just wave of hand. That's bullshit. Okay, let's move on.
All right, well, you were doing all this equal, balanced, nuanced, oh, the production value was good, and in the end, I guess there's something, 1 out of 5. It's like, really? Then don't explain the good parts. If it's 1 out of 5, it's complete shit. You don't need to overcompensate if you're just going to give it a 1.
It is complete shit. If you're talking about going to a movie paying $10 to be entertained, it's shit. Especially if you're not
1 out of
Mormon.
5 stands. That works for me. Now your description matches your score.
All right. I just didn't. I'm not as articulate. I'm not as articulate and verbose as you are.
You were just too nice.
All right,
Allison.
Okay, Bob, and then Alison, or Alison, then Bob.
Okay, I give it 2 out of 5. I didn't think the production value was all that great, mostly because of the spinning newspaper articles and photographs that kept happening during the Candy Bomber segment.
Great point. That was a great insight.
5 seconds.
I think it was, it was heartfelt and heartwarming stories about awesome people and they happened to be Mormon. But the premise was pretty much the opposite, that Mormons all happen to be awesome. And yeah, it's just meh. That's what I give it. Meh.
Meh.
Meh. I didn't hate it. Like, it didn't make me super angry and, I wish I hadn't have paid for it. I would have rather paid for the NC-17 movie that Randy paid for, but...
Yeah, or Left Behind. Yeah,
no.
But Allison, in general, you were kind of bored.
Oh, I was pretty bored, especially by the end. I don't know. I think that the order of the stories could have been different. It would have helped me to be a little more interested. And the narrator was really another big negative for me. Her tone of voice and just the chipperness, and I don't know, she kind of grated.
Do you think the order was calculated in that to personalize a missionary in the way they did at the end and tugging on the heartstrings to say, hey, you non-Mormons, if you run into these missionaries, this is the type of guy we're talking about. Please let them in. Do you think that was kind of the message of why they ended with that one?
Yeah, absolutely, because it wasn't just the missionary in that aspect that they talked about. It was also the single moms to missionaries who converted her, and they had pictures of her getting baptized. I mean, the whole thing, that whole final vignette was all about getting baptized and missionaries and how it makes your life better.
Right. Oh, that's a good point. So the not just the missionary mom, but the missionaries of the missionary mom were highlighted to tell non-members, personalize these missionaries to non-members to please let them in. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. And I thought, I had the same thought on that. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good. So I'm gonna give it 1 star. The production value was
that's bullshit.
Excellent.
That's bullshit.
I thought the production value was great, but I don't really care that much about the production value, because to me that's kind of the easy part for anybody who's trained in like professional editing and cinematography. Those are technical things that you can just sort of pay for, and it's not really the creative aspect of the movie that I'm sure it's still. I'm not saying it's easy, but like it's something that you can just sort of hire out, and it doesn't. For me, the most frustrating part of it is, and even after our conversation, I can totally see what you're saying, Matt, and I can see what you're saying, Allison, but I'm still confused as to what the message is and who the audience is supposed to be for this, because what they set up at the beginning of the film was, hey, people have these misconceptions about who Mormons are and what they believe, and there is absolutely nothing in this entire film that would give you a better idea of what Mormons really believe. I mean, there's nothing about the Book of Mormon. There's nothing about Joseph Smith. There's nothing about why Mormons have temples. There's nothing that would contextualize in any like, you're talking about it being an inch deep. Well, that inch deep is just sort of the most vague Christian Protestant type of words like Jesus and prayer,
service, be nice,
and service and faith and that sort of thing that could just as easily have been any other religion. And it's like the Mormons are trying so hard to be like everybody else, but everybody else knows that they're not, that it just sort of fell flat for me in terms of any kind of like documentary value of when I walk away from a documentary, I want to feel like I've really picked something up, and I don't feel like a non-Mormon is going to have that experience.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So
it's also kind of a straw man of, hey, everybody thinks that Mormons aren't actually people, but here's like these examples of people all over the world, and they happen to be Mormons. It's like, well, yeah, obviously, anybody who has like any common sense is going to realize that there's people in different religions that have different experiences, that have struggles, that have every human problem that's out there. So it could have just as easily for me been like, meet the Scientologist or meet the, you know, the Hindus or whatever. It could have been anybody.
Right. So I guess I'll be the token more positive review, even though technically I'm still giving it a very low score, just not by the standards of this crowd here. You guys are like hardcore critics.
Whoa. I gave it some positive reviews, didn't I?
You gave it a 1.5 to 2, which is a different version of bullshit. Nobody gives us, you know, a range for a rating. That's not allowed. But.
No, I said 1.5 or 2. That's Yes, it is. If you go higher than me, you're full of shit. So go.
We're all full of shit. That's the.
Everything is cool when you're part of a team. Everything is awesome when we live in our dreams.
Hi, this is Lane from Dallas, Texas, and my initials are LDS, which is kind of ironic now. You can comment on this episode on the website infantsonthrones.com. And if you really like what you hear, give the Quorum a 5-star rating and write a short review on iTunes.
Because you did. Didn't you, Lane? Lane?
I didn't, but that's only because I tend to avoid any and all cults now. Sorry, Apple fans.
Not cool.
Anyone for the closing prayer?
I gave this movie a 2.5 out of 5, which is on the not recommend side for me. So when I see movies, 3 is like, it's okay. 4 is like, oh, I really liked it, but it had some flaws. 5 is like, oh, I love this movie. I recommend it wholeheartedly. And I usually see a couple 5s a year. I see a lot of movies, probably about 50 a year. And this was a 2.5 because there are a lot worse movies than this.
Are you rating this as a Mormon, as an ex-Mormon, or as trying to see it through the eyes of a non-Mormon?
I'm rating it based on my personal experience, what I expect out of a movie, and whether or not I can recommend it.
See, and I have a hard time. This is why I'm going with 1, is because the overarching part of this for me was just, it was boring. There was nothing compelling me to finish watching it.
That
other
means
than
you would recommend
we were going to be recording
this
it.
means you would recommend this to non-Mormons, Bob.
No, I don't recommend below 3s. 3 is my threshold for recommending.
Okay.
So 2.5 means it was an okay bad movie.
Oh, you don't recommend it to other people if it's too okay.
Yeah, 3 is my threshold for recommending. So let me now that you've all called bullshit, let me explain what you called bullshit on.
All right, go.
So I thought it was an infomercial. I thought it was propaganda. But as I alluded to earlier, I thought it was exactly what a decent, person with a discerning eye. It's not that deceptive. I don't think people are going to be tricked. I think it's spot on for showing an institution how it wants to view itself. And so I recognize that there's some misdirection. There's some deceitfulness. But if you think about the category also of documentary. Documentary is a very controversial category because you don't see what's really going on. You see a highly customized version of the truth, and in a lot of ways, this is a pure version of the truth. Once you figure out what that truth is, as compared to documentaries, which are on the cutting room floor, one person or a small team that's pulling at your heartstrings, trying to tell you a story very, very in a very manipulative way. So, from a documentary perspective, it actually tells a story. The pacing isn't all that bad. I was bored a couple times, but overall, it's like 75 minutes. I've been more bored in Disney movies. It was okay, 2.5 out of 5. But it wasn't a recommend. I'm a Mormon, so of course I'm interested.
What Disney movies were you more bored in? I mean, I hate kids movies, but
yeah,
I can't think of a kids movie I was more bored in.
You don't watch the one.
Yeah, but you've got kids.
Well, I know, and they drive me nuts. Not my kids, the movies.
So Frozen, I gave a 3 out of 5. It was passable for me. It was like
seriously
barely okay.
So there's a 0.5 difference for you between this movie and Frozen.
That's a good point.
crazy, Bob.
I'm not crazy. Frozen is not a good movie. It's totally overrated.
I agree.
I don't disagree with you, Bob. It is overrated, but loyal listeners, the fact that he has a 0.5 difference between Meet the Mormons and Frozen, it is an indictment on Bob.
All right, Matt,
as a movie critic.
Matt, what's your difference between Meet the Mormons and the Book of Mormon movie?
Matt's making a soliloquy here to the audience.
What's your difference between Meet the Mormons and the Book of Mormon movie? How far apart are they? What was your score?
0.5. Oh, I got a range, don't I? 0.5 to 1. So somewhere between 1 and 2.
Mr. Hedge. So all of you 1 stars, you have no room to go lower when you rank the Book of Mormon movie, which is a way worse movie than
Yes, I do. I can go to 0.
Oh, 0 doesn't exist.
In your world.
That's not mine. I got 6.
How do you put 0 into your Netflix?
Who?
I don't.
Just don't rate it. Not interested.
Who says that you have to fit within the paradigm of Netflix?
Yeah, Netflix rating system is horrible.
Leonard Maltin allows for a bomb. He has Popeye as a bomb. So I think we can allow for that.
Go to Rotten Tomatoes and find me a 0 rating by any critic.
Meet the Mormons?
There's tons of
No, not zeros. They're ones.
No.
There's zeros.
0 out of 8 critics liked it.
No, that's a percentage, Randy. You don't follow movies. That's a percentage.
I don't give a shit.
Exciting word.
I don't give a shit about the rules of rating.
Don't rate a movie.
No, but the reason I like Rotten Tomatoes because instead of doing this out of stars, out of 5 stars thing,
Which is it's totally pulled out of your ass.
Right. It's just and it gives this kind of false sense that like everything starts at a 3. Like that's the problem with the Netflix ratings is when you click onto it, it's like already at a 3, right? Well, this is just up or down.
No. You don't use it right. There's 2 ratings on every Rotten Tomatoes.
No, I understand. There's the tomato meter and there's the audience score.
No, that's a different. There's the tomato meter and then there's the actual number underneath the tomato meter. So, for instance, Gone Girl has a tomato meter of 88%, but the average critic rating is 8 out of 10. There are 2 scores. So, if you get a 6 out of 10 or higher, then you are considered on the positive side. You add to the percentage. But then the aggregate score, so like a Gone Girl is both a high percentage of people like it. It's a high percentage of people who say it's better than a 6 out of 10, and a high percentage of people rate it high in the category because it has an average rating of 8 out of 10. Whereas there's like 100% Rotten Tomato movies that have like a 6.1 out of 10, which means they're barely passing grade, but 100% say they're barely passing grade.
Yeah, well, the problem I have with all this is that every time you see a movie that you
we're
think...
We're going to cut it all out anyway, but it's whatever.
Yeah, we're going to cut it all out, but...
No, I like the...
every time you see a movie that you think, this is the worst movie I've ever seen, you come across something worse. So you always have... So these ratings things, you always start with a false premise or a false notion of what is mediocre and what is good and what is bad. So I just don't give a shit. So I guess I won't rate movies anymore.
Yeah, but you can't compare documentaries to mainstream big budget movies.
I agree with that.
Documentaries to documentaries.
Yeah, I agree with that. So that's usually when I give a rating, it's compared to its comparable films in its sphere. So documentaries, it's like a rating of this documentary versus ratings of other documentaries. And documentaries I generally actually like a little bit more. So this is a disappointing documentary, but it's not.
Right. Okay. That makes a little more sense then.
Yeah.
All right. So I like that. So as a documentary, this may skew higher compared to mainstream films, but as a documentary, it skews lower compared to other documentaries. Fair?
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm with you on that, Bob.
All right.
I support Bob on his 2.5 on the documentary scale.
It took like 30 minutes to get there, but we're good. Okay, so who's gonna get the shit out of this thing?
Yeah, after everything that Bob said, though, does anyone want to change their rating?
Probably not. Nope, nobody cares about my stance.
I'll go to a solid 2 instead of a 1.5.
Hey, look at that!
Way to commit.
So we didn't change it. So
yeah, but I don't have a range anymore. You can't call me fish mouth anymore.
Okay.
Thank you for listening to Infants on Thrones.